You know what's strange? Some people disappear long before they die. They walk through life like quiet shadows, seen, but never really noticed, present, but never truly felt. People look at them, talk to them, sit beside them, maybe even live with them, and still miss them entirely. And if you're watching this, there's a good chance you know exactly what that feels like. This video isn't about loneliness. It's about a much deeper fracture. The experience of being invisible even when the world's eyes are technically on you. A psychological state that forms slowly, silently, and painfully until one day you wake up and you're not a person in your own story anymore. You're just background noise. Let's talk about where this begins. Most people who grow into the invisible ones didn't start that way. They were made into that role, little by little, moment by moment, ignored here, interrupted there, shamed for speaking, blamed for feeling, punished for taking up too much emotional space, rewarded only when they were quiet, helpful, non-threatening, convenient. So they learned the ultimate survival strategy: disappear without leaving. These people didn't choose to be invisible. They adapted to environments where visibility was dangerous. For some, it started in childhood. Maybe their parents were too overwhelmed, too self-absorbed, too chaotic, or too emotionally absent to truly see them. So the child learned, my needs bother people. My voice doesn't matter. I'm safest when I fade into the background. And the brain remembered. For others, invisibility developed later. A humiliating relationship, a friend group that used them but never valued them, a workplace where they tried their best but were always overlooked. Repeated emotional injuries slowly rewired their identity. Now here's the psychological twist. These people are not invisible. They just believe they are. And the belief becomes a self-fulfilling reality. Because once the mind decides I'm not worth noticing, the body follows. Your voice gets quieter. Your posture tightens. Your reactions shrink. Your ideas stay unspoken. Your presence becomes softer and softer until you turn into a version of yourself that barely leaves a trace. People don't ignore you because you're invisible. You become invisible because the world trained you to believe your presence isn't meaningful. And the tragic part, invisible people are often the most observant, emotionally sensitive, perceptive individuals in any room. They notice everything, except their own worth. But here's the most important truth in this entire video. Invisibility is a psychological illusion, not a permanent identity. What was learned can be unlearned. What was broken can be rebuilt. What was dimmed can be reignited. But before you escape invisibility, you have to understand its deeper mechanics, why your brain clings to it, why your body repeats it, and why part of you feels safer disappearing than being seen. You've probably met someone like this before. Someone who laughs at every joke but their eyes stay still. Someone who says I'm fine with the voice of a person who hasn't been fine for a very long time. Someone who shows up yet somehow never arrives. These are the people who feel invisible even when everyone sees them. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Invisibility is not a condition. It's a defense mechanism, a psychological survival strategy, a quiet rebellion against a world that never learned how to listen. Most people think invisibility happens because someone is shy, weak, or socially anxious. Wrong. Many of the most invisible people are the ones with the richest internal worlds, the deepest perception, the sharpest emotional intelligence. But they grew up in environments that punished depth. Families where big emotions were too much. Schools where sensitivity was mocked. Friend groups where vulnerability was treated like a flaw, not a language. So here's what usually forms. The first layer. Hyper-observation. Before they ever learned how to speak their truth, they learned how to read everyone else's. Every mood, every shift, every hidden intention. Their brain became a radar constantly scanning for danger, rejection, or disappointment. Being invisible wasn't chosen, it was trained. The second layer, self-erasure. This is where things get tragic. When someone repeatedly gets ignored or misunderstood, the mind adapts by removing the parts of the self that caused the pain. Your real opinion? Delete. Your real needs? Mute. Your real emotions? Hide them behind a practiced half smile. And at first, this feels like protection. But over time, something darker forms. You begin losing the ability to feel real even to yourself. You don't disappear from the world. You disappear from your own identity. The third layer. Performative existence. People who feel invisible often act like everything is okay, because they've mastered a psychological trick. If you play a role long enough, people stop asking who you really are, and for them, that's safer. No questions, no expectations, no vulnerability, just a quiet presence in the room, a shadow performing normality. And the scary part, they often look successful, calm, stable, but inside, they carry the silent terror of someone who feels like a ghost. I'm here, but I'm not really living. The hidden reason they stay invisible, it's not that they don't want to be seen. It's that being seen feels dangerous. Because when someone sees you, they can judge you, criticize you, reject you, leave you. And for a person who has lived their life half invisible, nothing is more terrifying than being fully visible and still not enough. So they stay quiet. They stay small. They stay behind the emotional curtain, not because they're weak, but because once upon a time, disappearing saved them. But now, it's slowly killing them. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, you are about to discover the part that hurts the most, and the part that can finally set you free. There is a moment in every invisible person's life when they realize something terrifying. People can look directly at you and still never truly see you. And once that realization sinks in, a new kind of exhaustion begins. The exhaustion of performing a life you don't feel connected to. You start wearing a mask so often it becomes muscle memory. A practiced half smile. A controlled tone of voice. A perfectly casual "I'm fine." But behind that mask, something quieter is happening. Something deeper. Something most people never notice. Because invisible people learn to hide their emotions, like priceless artifacts behind bulletproof glass. And yet they still break. Not loudly, not visibly, not dramatically. They break silently, on the inside, in ways no one would ever expect. Because invisible people become experts at looking stable while falling apart. It's not dishonesty, it's survival. You see, the invisible person never wants to be a burden. They never want to be the dramatic one, or the complicated one, or the problem. So they learn to suffer quietly. They become the friend who listens but never opens up. The one who comforts everyone but confides in no one. The one who seems strong because their weakness is never shown. But here is the hidden psychology behind that. Invisible people don't hide their pain because they're strong. They hide it because no one ever made space for it. At some point in their life, childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, they learned that their feelings didn't matter, or that expressing them only led to rejection, punishment, or indifference. So they trained themselves to disappear emotionally, externally present, internally absent, a ghost inside their own body. People trust them, people rely on them, people talk to them, but no one ever asks the real question: how are you really? Because invisible people are so good at pretending that everyone believes the performance, even when it's killing them. And here's the paradox. Invisible people desperately want someone to notice them, but they're terrified of actually being seen. To be seen means to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable means to risk being misunderstood, or worse, ignored. So they stay in the shadows, hoping someone will look for them without them having to call out. They want to be found, but they don't want to ask for it. This is the silent conflict that eats them alive. I want to be seen, but I don't want to be exposed. I want connection, but I don't trust closeness. I want someone to understand me, but I can't explain myself. And so, invisible people walk through life like actors trapped in a role they never auditioned for. They smile, they help, they reassure, they stay calm, they stay okay. But inside, they whisper a truth no one else hears. I'm tired of hiding. Yet they keep hiding anyway. Not because they want invisibility, but because invisibility was the only thing that ever felt safe. There is a strange kind of exhaustion that only invisible people understand. It's not the tiredness of the body. It's the tiredness of wearing a mask that no one even realizes is a mask. You walk through life performing a version of yourself that feels acceptable, digestible, harmless. Not because you're fake, but because you learned, a long time ago, that your real self didn't earn you connection, only confusion, misjudgment, or silence. So you became what the world could easily process. And now years later you don't know how to stop. This is the hidden psychology of people who feel invisible, even when everyone sees them. They become so good at adapting that they forget how to exist without performing. You smile automatically. You nod even when you disagree. You talk, but every sentence is filtered through a mental editor who asks, will this make them pull away? You've built emotional Wi-Fi, constantly scanning the room, reading micro-expressions, adjusting your energy so fast that even you don't notice you're doing it. It's subconscious survival. Invisible people weren't born invisible, they were trained into it. Maybe you had a parent who only noticed you when you were good. Maybe you had a friend who drifted away when you expressed something real. Maybe you lived in an environment where attention came only when you were useful, quiet, or manageable. So you learned. Visibility is dangerous. Authenticity is unpredictable. Silence is safer. This becomes your inner algorithm in adulthood. You show only the parts that won't create conflict. You speak only when you're sure it won't shake the room. You shrink in places where you should expand. You smile in moments where you should cry. You apologize for existing in spaces where others feel entitled to take up all the air. And then you wonder why life feels like a movie where you're only an extra, standing in the background of your own story. The cruel truth is this: when you hide long enough, people eventually believe the version you show them. They think you're calm, unbothered, quiet, low maintenance. They think you don't need support, attention, or understanding, because how could they know what you never reveal? This is where invisible people get trapped. They crave connection but fear the exposure connection requires. They want to be seen but dread what will happen when someone finally looks. You end up living in a painful contradiction. You want depth, but you've built your life on shallow water. You tell yourself, maybe someone will just understand me without me having to explain. But that's not how humans work. That's how fantasy works. This is why you feel disconnected even in relationships that look fine from the outside. You're present physically, absent emotionally. People like you, but they don't know you. And part of you resents them for it, even though you're the one hiding. Here's the psychological shift you need to hear. Visibility isn't about suddenly revealing everything. It's about slowly allowing yourself to exist without editing. Authenticity happens in micro moments. Saying what you actually think, even if your voice is soft, admitting when you don't feel okay, letting someone see your real reaction. Allowing yourself to take up space without apologizing for it. It's not a dramatic unmasking. It's a gentle returning. And the people who are meant for you will not run from the weight of your truth. They will recognize it, because they've carried their own. There is one final truth about people who feel invisible. One that almost no one talks about because it's uncomfortable, raw, and painfully honest. Invisible people are not actually unseen. They are unexpressed. You can exist in a room where everyone sees your body, hears your voice, and still feel like a ghost, because the world is not meeting you. It's meeting the mask you learn to wear. The polite version, the quiet version, the strong version, the version who never asks for anything. The version who thinks blending in is safer than being understood. When you feel invisible, it's because the real you, the emotional you, hasn't spoken in years. You became the person everyone could rely on, except yourself. You became the one who listens, but is never heard. You became the calm one, the stable one, the fine one, even when something inside you is silently collapsing. Here is the psychology behind your invisibility. 1. You trained people to believe you don't need anything. The more you hide your pain, the more people assume you have none. The more you stay quiet, the more people assume you're okay with being overlooked. You think you're protecting yourself, but really, you're starving yourself of the human experience. Connection. Invisible people don't lack attention. They lack permission to be human. 2. You don't share your inner world because you expect rejection. You've convinced yourself that your deeper thoughts are too much, that your emotions are inconvenient, that your desires are unrealistic. So you shrink your presence to avoid being judged. But shrinking doesn't make you safer, it just makes you disappear. 3. You've forgotten how to let yourself be seen, and this is the hardest part. Being seen is not something others do to you, it's something you allow. You can be surrounded by people, but if you never step out from behind the wall you built, they will never know you exist. You're not invisible because people don't care. You're invisible because you stopped sharing the parts of you worth caring about. 4. Your invisibility is a defense mechanism that overstayed its purpose once. It protected you. Now, it isolates you. You don't need it anymore. So what's the way out? Not forcing yourself to be loud. Not pretending to be someone else. Not demanding attention. The real cure for emotional invisibility is this. Start showing small pieces of the real you. Consistently, courageously, even awkwardly. Say something you usually keep inside. Tell someone the truth instead of implying. Share one fear. Admit one desire. Let one person get close enough to understand you. Visibility is not a spotlight. It's a door you open from the inside. And once you open it, even a little, something incredible happens. People finally see you. Not the mask. Not the role. Not the strong one. You. The human being who has been waiting for years to step back into their own life. Because the truth is simple. You were never invisible. You were just hiding. And now you're allowed to stop.